What's up, guys? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Joey Munoz, Nutrition Science Ph.D. and founder of Fit for Life Academy. Today's episode is completely different than any of my previous episodes. I actually had an interview with one of my clients, and he shared his personal experience and his journey. Pasquale is someone I've been working with for almost a year now, and he has made some incredible improvements in his overall health and his body composition. Pasquale's pretty much 50 pounds down from the beginning of his health and fitness journey, which is absolutely incredible. But I think more incredible is the fact that he feels extremely confident that he'll be able to maintain his results long term based off of some of the things that we've worked on during our time together. Anyways, guys, if you've been struggling with your personal health and fitness, I think this episode is going to be extremely relatable, and you're going to benefit a ton from Pasquale sharing his experience. As always, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, I would appreciate if you take a second to leave a rating, ideally 5 stars, please, and leave a review as well. I know it takes a couple minutes of your time. I know you have to look at your phone. I know it is annoying, perhaps, but it helps me a ton. I'm begging you. It's the only thing I ask for in return for all of this free information I put out. You leaving a rating and a review helps my podcast grow, and it helps me reach more people, so I would greatly appreciate it. In addition, if after listening to the interview with Pasquale, you feel like you are ready to make a change, improve your health and fitness, and want to work with me as your coach, submit an inquiry for one-on-one coaching on my website, fitforlifeacademy.health. The link is going to be in the description of this podcast episode. Anyways, let's get into the show. Hope you enjoy. What's up, Pasquale? How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Joseph. How are you?
Doing great, dude. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking time to be here today. You and I were just talking before this. This is the first time I've had one of my clients on the podcast, and I had this idea a couple weeks ago of how powerful it would be for people like yourself to share your firsthand experience, right? Because yes, I give recommendations, I talk about science, I have friends of mine who also are professionals in this field, and it's almost like a top-down approach, right? And I think it would just be really cool to let my audience hear directly from you and from other clients of mine in terms of the things that you've really learned and benefited from the whole coaching process. So first and foremost, how long have we been working together now? Almost a year, right?
Yeah, it'll be a
Close to
year
a
in
year.
January.
Because we worked for a whole 6 months first, and then we're on our second 6-month term currently. And so you and I have gone through a lot. I know we've gone through periods of like intense weight loss, periods where perhaps we haven't been losing weight as our primary goal. We've navigated traveling, we've navigated holidays. Now we're trying to navigate through a small injury that you're experiencing, right? So you and I have actually been through a lot, which is why I wanted to talk to you first and foremost. But how about we start by you sharing what are some of the results that you've achieved in the time that we've been working together?
Well, thanks for having me on. First, I really appreciate it. It's really cool to be on here. Um, the results that I've had when we started, I think I was around 190, like between 190, 195, something like that. And as of today, I'm down to I think 67 when I weighed myself this morning. It was actually a little bit less last week, but talking about travel,
Yeah.
I put on a little bit, but that's okay, right? And that's one of the things I've really learned is that you have to enjoy yourself. You have to be able to enjoy your life, and when you're traveling, when you're doing something special, it's okay. It's okay to, we were just talking about Thanksgiving before, have that piece of pie, you know, enjoy yourself in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, because ultimately, what it was it going to be like a day, 2 days, 3 days, and you can get yourself right back on track within a week, but 2 at most. So I enjoyed myself on the trip, and I'm pretty much back to where I was. I was like 163 the day I flew out. So I'm only like 4 pounds up, and that was about a week ago. So I'm perfectly comfortable with what I did when I traveled down to New Orleans, and I'm perfectly comfortable where I am right now because I know I can shed those 4 pounds, and it's not even 4 pounds. That's something we've talked about too. It's water retention.
Mhm.
That's food that's still in the stomach. That's waste that's built up. So it's not beforehand. Before working with you, I would have worried about that. Like, oh man, I gained 4 pounds. How am I gonna? I have to do
Yeah.
something extreme to lose it again. But now it's just I'm okay. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, so you've dropped pretty much a little bit over 30 pounds, which is a lot. No, a little under 30 pounds, roughly around 30 pounds, which is huge.
Yeah,
Dude, you look fantastic, by the way. I know
thank
you upload the progress images, like almost have a hardcore six pack now, which is super cool.
you. Yeah, something
um,
I thought I'd have. By the way,
sorry?
something I never thought I'd have.
Yeah. And not even that, like, it's not that hard, right? Like, it's not that hard. The reason it's not that hard, or the reason why it is so hard for people, is because people make it hard unintentionally. Right. So one thing I wanted to talk about is, you mentioned that some of the things that perhaps you would have done, or the mindset that you would have had prior to us working together. Before we started working together, were you actively trying to improve your health, improve body composition, or was it something you started focusing on more when we did start working together?
I was actively trying to work on my body composition. I was before we started working together, I was around 215, 220. I took off about 20 to 30 pounds on my own, but I had like a skinny fat thing going on where there was no muscle tone. I wasn't, I didn't look anywhere near like I look now, and I was getting some, looking back on it, not the best advice from some other people, from some, professionals.
Yeah.
One thing that really sticks out to me, some advice I got was I was experimenting with different diets too. I was doing keto and carnivore, and one of the pieces of advice I got was that calories don't matter. You
Mm,
can, I think this is when I was doing carnivore.
mhm.
I was working with someone, and she told me, calories don't matter. It doesn't matter how many calories you eat a day. You're getting that fat or that fat in. You're not eating the carbs, so the weight's going to come off. And I trusted her, and I'm a big meat eater anyway, so I was
Yeah.
prime with that. And I started noticing, my pants were getting tighter, my composition wasn't looking as good as it had been, and so I kind of realized, something's going on here. This isn't working. So I had, and then I tried some more stuff on my own, but I kept hitting these plateaus,
Mhm.
like these kind of like glass ceilings, because I knew I could do better, but I didn't know how. And there's so much information out there, so much information and misinformation, and I wanted to, sorry for the language, but cut the bullshit, get
Yeah.
right to what I needed to do and cut through everything else, cut through the noise. And I ended up finding you through Outwork,
Mhm.
and it's been a great experience just in terms of the knowledge that I have now and how comfortable I am um, sharing that knowledge with other people as well. Because I know if it worked for me, it can work for other
Yeah.
people. Besides, the little differences here and there, but overall, the rules are the same for everyone, right? Calories in, calories out. Get your heart rate up a few times a week. Do some resistance training if you're able to, and you'll be in good shape. You'll be better in shape than the large majority of people out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanna get into some of those things, a little bit more specifically too, but I wanna hear from you. Before you and I started working together and you were trying all of these different things, and maybe you had some success with some and not so much success with others, what were some of the things that you were really struggling with? Right? Because I didn't meet you when you were like 215, 220 or whatnot. You mentioned a mindset component, right? Of like perhaps really freaking out previously if you saw your weight go up slightly because of a trip or whatnot. So what were some of the things that you were really struggling with beforehand. And then when we talk about that, I definitely want to transition and discuss how has your knowledge changed around those specific things or mindset as well, perhaps.
A really big thing for me for my mindset has been tracking things on apps, weighing my food. That's been a huge help because I've been doing it for so long now that I know what I can do in a day,
Hmm.
and like what I can, for lack of a better term, get away with. Like we were just talking about
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and I have family coming in today too, and we're going out to eat. So now I'm prepared, right? We've talked about having a game plan. Whereas before, I'd just be like, all right, well, we're going out to eat. I'm going to be going over calories anyway. So
Hmm.
what's the point in, reducing anything anyway? I'm just going to have a bad day, a cheat day, right? I think that's
Yeah.
like the term everyone uses, like a cheat day. And then cheat days eventually turn into like cheat weekends. And then it snowballs from there. So my mindset has really been having a game plan.
Mhm.
That's been a major shift for me. Having a game plan when I know I'll be going out to eat, or I'll be going out with friends, or going out for a couple of drinks or something like that.
Yeah.
Really being prepared in knowing in what I'll be doing.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. Some people like yourself enjoy tracking long term. Some people don't, right? I think, and this is something I usually talk about, it's like tracking doesn't necessarily just mean tracking calories, right? Calories is one thing you can track, but there's a number of things that you can track, including your body weight, your protein intake, your steps, etc. Right? These are just different metrics that can guide us in the right direction, and really tell us about whether we're moving in the right direction or not, right? And some people are really, really resistant to that idea of tracking things. They think perhaps it's too um, meticulous or too obsessive. And, like, if you've been struggling with your health and your fitness, like, you should probably track some stuff. Maybe not forever, but at least for a period of time. And the analogy I like to use is like, listen, if let's say you're in school, right? And you suck at math, um, but you need to pass the math class. You can't just say, like, no, I don't want to take notes. No, I don't want to study. It's like you absolutely have to in order to learn the material to be able to pass the math class. And here, like, with this stuff with health and fitness, we're not passing any tests, but tracking stuff helps you learn about these things. If your health and fitness has gone in the wrong direction by a lot, let's say, you can say that that's fairly equivalent to, like, sucking at health and fitness the same way you suck at math, right? Like, I'm not trying to be blunt or mean here, but, like, it's the same sort of analogy, right? So doing these things that are meticulous helps you get better at that thing, because at the end of the day, and like you mentioned this, Pasquale, you now have a much better intuitive sense of how much can you get away with. And maybe it's not even how much can you get away with, but it's really just intuitively knowing how much is too much food, how much is too little food. If you've been more active, how much more can you eat? If you're being sedentary, how much less to eat? You know how to make these modifications, right? And would you know how to make those modifications as a direct result of spending time tracking stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, it, like today, for example, I know we're going to get cheeseburgers,
Mhm.
and so off the bat, I know it's probably going to be 80/20. So I just put that right in the app.
Yeah.
Probably going to be like 8 ounces of beef,
Yep.
potato bone, American cheese, and right there, like there's something that's not going to be perfect, but I have a rough idea of what it's going to be, so I can track around that.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, man. Like, even when you say, like, 8 ounces, 80/20, people who have never tracked don't know what that means. Right? Like, they're just like, it's like, "Oh, it's just a cheeseburger," and then they look in the app and they're like, if they're trying to track, it's like, "Oh, which one do I pick?" It's like, "I don't know," but you have a much better sense of that because 'cause you've been doing it for a while, right? Yeah, like, most burgers are probably gonna be around 8 ounces of beef. Most times it's gonna be 80/20 in terms of 80% lean, 20% fat. That's what's called chuck, right? Ground chuck. So those are things that you learn, and it's funny because when people are resistant, let's be honest, most people are resistant to tracking calories because it's meticulous, right? But I think it comes from two places. Like, one, maybe they've tried it before and they've had a really bad experience with it because they didn't have someone guide them correctly. Because oftentimes, you know, people are all or nothing. So they're 100% in. And like the moment they go out to eat and perhaps they can't track perfectly, they get overwhelmed, you get anxious. It's like, well, how am I supposed to stick to my calories if I can't track this? And you start to get all of these negative sort of thoughts that kind of spiral you in a bad direction, right? And you and I have talked about this before too. When we started, like, hey man, I'm going out. I don't know how to track. It's like, dude, tracking is not something where you have to be perfect. It's something that you have to be consistent with the majority of the time. And if you're being consistent with it, if there are some errors here and there, it's not that big of a deal. It's essentially like, don't be so stressed out about it. If once a week you have a meal that you can't track, like whatever, it's okay. Do like track it to the best of your ability. If you're trying to lose weight, maybe overestimate what you think is in it by 10 or 15% and just move on, right? And when you have that sort of flexibility, it puts a lot less stress on you when it comes to tracking. And then the other aspect of it is I think people really think like they're like, oh, if you track your calories, it's like a way of dieting that you have to track your calories the rest of your life. And you can track the rest of your life if you like it and you don't mind it. You seem to be somebody who doesn't mind it. You actually enjoy the feedback it gives you. Some people really don't like it, but even then, I usually tell people really just take about 3 or 4 months and dedicate time to this thing. If you're saying that your health is important, if you're saying that you really want to lose body fat, improve overall body composition, just take 3 or 4 months and be really meticulous with this thing, and then you can transition away. What will those 3 or 4 months do for you? It'll do what it's done for you, Pasquale, right? Where you now know, like, dude, realistically, if you spent a month without tracking, you would probably be able to maintain your body weight, right? You probably wouldn't gain a ton of weight. You probably wouldn't lose a ton of weight. You probably know exactly how much to eat, what modifications to make, what healthy meals look like. Those are the things you learn from taking a period of time to track things meticulously, right? Like if you see a plate of food in front of you, you could probably say that's probably roughly 700, 800 calories. If I asked you, Pasquale, how would you reduce the caloric content of that meal? You'd probably say, well, I'd probably substitute this for that, and it'd probably be 100 less calories. You know how to do those things because you've been tracking, right? So that's one of the things I really like to preach. Okay, so a good amount of stuff talking about nutrition, right? And we've been focusing on tracking specifically, but we also obviously work on some behavioral related stuff too, right? Protein intake, fruit and vegetable intake. Even though I assign some of these habits a little bit more specifically to some clients than others, because some people have an overall like way less healthy diet. You're somebody who naturally you eat pretty healthy anyways. This is stuff that you and I have talked about. You're not somebody who like mainly eats fast food and has never eaten fruits and veggies. So some of these things come a little bit more intuitively to you. But have you found perhaps our approach to feel a lot less restrictive based off the fact that you simply have to focus on these little behaviors every day rather than feeling like you have to avoid certain things, which is the approach that most people take?
Yeah, it's definitely been easier, and I think it goes back really to my upbringing. Um, my mom always had a hot meal for dinner, like a
Mhm.
homemade hot meal for us for dinner, like all the time, every day. Thanks, mom, for that.
Same here,
Um,
dude.
so like going out to eat, like fast food, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I would have it every now and then, but it never really appealed to me. It was never really a meal to me. A
Mhm,
meal to me is always, sitting at the dinner table
mhm,
with something something hot in front of me. And so I kind of I kind of use that, and I enjoy cooking too.
mhm,
So and it goes back to what we said before. I'm kind of like that analytical, meticulous person where I like knowing what I'm eating, how much I'm eating. So all this kind of came natural to me. It wasn't really an issue. Um, the issue was really I thought I was eating enough protein, but I really wasn't.
mm,
And that's where the tracking came in and it helped a lot. And with that extra bit of protein I was eating, that helped satiate me more. So I wasn't really reaching for something unhealthy. At the end of a meal, like something sweet. Sometimes I would like to have like a cookie or like a little bit of ice cream or something like that.
mhm,
But now it's um, like fruit. And fruit, I have right now. I'm eating like a pint of raspberries and a pint of blackberries every
Mhm.
day at
Yeah.
the end of the day because they're delicious. I love them.
Yeah.
So that's like the replacement that we're talking about there. So uh, you're right. It did come easier to me, but there's also, that the part that little bit of a learning curve that you have to, you got where it takes some introspection. It really takes, you have to take a hard look at yourself and what you're doing, and is what you're doing really the best for you. And it's kind of, going back to tracking for a little bit, it's a little strange. There's a social component to it too. Um, right, where I've shown people how I track and what I do and how I have, my meals planned out for the week. And then, I've been called crazy or, other things like that. And then these same people who are calling me crazy, I'm, in my head, I'm like, all right, well, you asked me how I'm doing this. Sorry, but
Yeah.
I'm crazy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of odd how that
It's the same dude, it's so funny how people are so quick to judge, especially when you're doing something that's positive for yourself, right? Because you could say the same thing with people who, like, for example, if you have a family member or a friend who's doing really well financially, and maybe before they weren't doing well financially, and, they seem to figure something out with business or with their career or whatever it may be, and then you ask them for advice, and maybe they say something like, well, um, I I put aside 4 hours every Saturday and Sunday morning to work on these things with my business. And that person would be like, "Wow, that's crazy. You work on the weekends?" It's like, "Well, hey, like, that's just what it takes, man. That's the price you have to pay if you want this thing, right?" And it's like, it's so funny because with nutrition, with health, with fitness, people think that for some reason it's different. Like, because, the industry has sold that what's wrong is that you're missing something. Like, you're missing the perfect diet or the perfect workout program or the perfect supplement, or there's something wrong with your hormones. It's never, oh, like, hey, you should actually spend some time learning about the fundamentals of this stuff, slowly work on habit formation, have some sort of form of accountability and support, right? For you, it's been working with me, having a coach, but for some people, it's maybe a family member or a community, or but having some sort of accountability and support is incredibly important. And actually put time and effort into this thing. It's so funny because people recognize that anything, but literally anything in life that you want to accomplish or get better at requires time, effort, sacrifice. But then when it comes to weight loss and improving health, they don't think those things are true. They're just like, "Oh, I just don't have the right plan." It's not about effort or sacrifice. Like, it is about effort and sacrifice. And when I say sacrifice, it doesn't mean it has to be super freaking hard. It actually shouldn't. You should find a way to make it enjoyable, which I think is a component of your success as well, is that you actually enjoy doing these things. You enjoy the workouts. You enjoy making your meals. You enjoy tracking your stuff, eating healthy, being able to stay on plan, right? Because if you enjoy it, you build consistency, right? You're more likely to do the stuff you enjoy. And I think one of the big reasons why people fail is because they do so in a way that's not enjoyable at all, right? But it's like, yeah, the effort is still required. You still have to put in the time, for lack of a better term. What are your thoughts about that? How do you respond to your friends when they say things like that?
whenever I have this conversation, it's always, well, what did you do? Like, did you cut out carbs?
Mm,
No, actually, I increased my carbs.
yeah,
Uh, I, you know, I'm tracking the calories, and they, and it's a weird thing too because it's almost as if, like, it's a simple thing. Well, at least to me, it's a simple thing. Tracking, making sure your calories are where they need to be. But people want, like you were kind of saying before, like a simple answer, right?
mhm,
Like cut out carbs or just increase protein or cut out something and then the weight will come off, or take this product
yeah,
and you'll be okay. But that's not what it takes.
yeah,
It'll help. Like some things may help, like cutting out some carbs will probably be helpful because a lot of the carbs people are thinking about are bread and sugar,
yeah,
candy, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that'll help a little bit. But the more important thing is making sure you're getting like protein. And that's something I've actually noticed with a lot of people around me is that they're not eating the amount of protein that
Yes.
I sufficient for them.
Yeah.
And so when we've had this conversation before, like you have to like there's a replacement, right? If you're
Yeah.
eating so many carbs, but if you want to make a change, you can, let's say you're eating like 300 carbs a day or something like that. Reduce that by 100 and increase protein by 100 grams. That should be that's okay right there. Like you've made the switch. Like it may not be as satisfying to some people because they have that sweet tooth or they want that piece of bread to go along with their salad or something like that. But like that's a simple change, and I think and that could be hard for a lot of people because it can be hard to get that amount of protein, and they're not sure how to do it or the sources that
Yeah.
are good. Or when people like this is what I've run into too. When I say protein, they automatically think steak and it's fattening.
Yeah.
And I tell people, lean fish is great. I eat seafood 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a week because I enjoy it, and it's something that's low calories, high protein. Like salmon has a decent amount of fat in it, but it's like the good fat, right? The omega threes. That's kind of I know like a buzz thing everyone's talking about now,
Yeah.
like the omega threes. But that's something that's necessary for people, and that's part of the salmon and the seafood and the fatty seafood. So there's a lot of difficult transitions that people don't want to make, you know, and it's not just for whatever reason. That part confuses me.
Hey guys, some of you may not know that I'm the scientific advisor for a supplement company called Outwork Nutrition. I help with the formulation of new products to help ensure that they're effective and backed by science. Unlike many other supplement companies out there, we don't rely on exaggerated claims or flashy marketing tactics. Instead, we let the science speak for itself. We take pride in formulating products that deliver real results, helping you achieve your fitness goals in a meaningful way. If you're in the market for supplements like protein powder, pre-workout, or recovery products, make sure to check us out at outworknutrition.com. And as a thank you for being an avid listener of this podcast, use code Joey for an exclusive discount at checkout. You can find the link to our website down in the description of this podcast episode. Remember, our goal is to empower you with science-backed supplements that truly make a difference. Choose Outwork Nutrition and elevate your fitness to new heights.
Yeah,
Well, a person has to be ready to change. That's one aspect of it too, right? You can't force somebody to change. Somebody has to be ready to change. And people are ready to change at different points in their life for different reasons, right? Some people, maybe like for yourself, it's being a little bit overweight, not feeling comfortable, you're ready to change. Some people literally need to have a life threatening event in order to make a change, as sad as it is, right? But it's the truth, man. I've seen, and this hurts me to even say, but I have a very, very close friend of mine um, who has struggled with his weight and his health his whole life. His whole life, man. Imagine one of your closest friends being like the sweetest, funniest, coolest people you know, and just like really struggles with his health, right? And I'm the type of person like I don't want to impose my thoughts on others, so I don't give unsolicited advice. But my friend had a heart attack in his 20s.
Jeez.
In his 20s, early
Yeah.
20s too. This was like 24, 25. Um, he didn't pass away. He survived. Like, thankfully, he's good, but has made no change. And it's really sad because he actually reached out to me and he was like, hey, man, like, this can't happen again. I have to improve my health. And I offered to help him for free. I was like, man, I want to help you. You are literally one of my closest friends. I don't want to see something bad happen to you. And he was super enthusiastic, super motivated. 2 weeks later, didn't hear from him. That's it, right? So it sucks, man, because some people, the tough reality is some people have a really, really, really hard time making a change, right? And I don't know necessarily why that is, um, because I think naturally, I think genetics plays a role here in terms of like what our innate personality is. And I think this is some of the stuff that I talk about related to mindset too, and like having a growth mindset and really like truthfully embracing change, right? And when I say truthfully embracing change, I don't mean like somebody saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm ready to change." It's like having an innate belief that given a difficult circumstance, you are actually able to adapt to that circumstance. You are adaptable, right? I consider myself somebody who is very adaptable. And I think part of that is because ever since I was a kid, I've been dealing with like pretty hard adversity my whole life, whether it's stuff at home that I've had to deal with, or just even ever since I was a little kid. I did martial arts, I played sports. My mom like put me in like chess classes and like music classes, and like all of these things are hard, right? And like I always just was naturally attracted to these things and I liked them. But it also was like, okay, for example, I wanted to learn how to play guitar. I know I'm not good at it now, but if these other people can do it and I just do it a little bit at a time, I can do it, right? And it's that is the whole premise of having a growth mindset is like knowing that things are going to be challenging, knowing that there are going to be bumps along the road, but being open to actually learning and seeing challenges as opportunities to grow rather than setbacks, right? Because most people, or a lot of people, I should say, really feel like they are unwilling to change, right? Even like what I was saying earlier of like, let's say you're bad at math. Some people are just like, I'm bad at math. And sure, maybe some people's brains don't work in that way. But the honest truth is that they probably somewhere along their life had a bad experience with math, right? Whether it's in second grade, they were told to go on the board and they were embarrassed because they couldn't do the thing. And ever since then, they shied away from it. And so inherently, they never put that much work or effort towards it. And so they think they're bad at math, right? Where the reality is like, no, you've just been avoiding this thing. And if maybe you won't be the best mathematician in the world, but if you put a little bit of effort towards it, you wouldn't be bad at it because you're embracing the challenge, right? I've always considered myself an absolutely horrible speaker. And I know that even saying that is a bad thing to say, right? But like I know now that I've improved it a ton. And the reason why I have always thought that I'm a bad speaker is because English is not my first language. Spanish is. So kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I didn't speak English at home. So in school, when the teacher called me to read, I was embarrassed because I couldn't read like the other kids, right? I couldn't speak like the other kids. I've always stuttered a little bit too. I've always been really embarrassed about it. And then part of it was just like, man, like for my career, I need to do social media. I should have a podcast. I should be talking to people. I should create a presence for myself. Let me work on this talking thing. And when I do my videos, obviously this podcast is live, but when I do my videos, I script stuff and I practice it and I read it and I make sure I'm saying it more clearly and I just work on it. And now I don't think I'm a bad speaker, right? Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent there.
Well, no, all right, because I'm a teacher, so
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're saying and what I see in the classroom. And it's similar to what I tell my students. Like how are you going to get better at something, anything, sports, math, reading, writing? How are you going to get better by sitting there and magically getting better at it,
Mhm.
or by practicing? You have to practice. And I always tell them the same thing too. I tell them when you hear practice makes perfect, that's not right. Practice makes better. You're going to get
Yeah.
better when you practice it, no matter what you do, whether
Yeah.
it's math, reading, writing. If you want to get better at something, you got to practice at it more, and that's
Yeah.
hard. And I see it in. I just had parent teacher conferences the other day, and I had a parent tell me that their child quit football because it was too hard. They there was like two or three practices a week, and her child didn't like it because it was too hard and there was too much, and he wanted to play with his friends. And in my mind, I was, why did you let him quit? Why did you
Yeah.
not have him keep going? It's really and it's kind of goes back to what you were saying before about your friend too. Like the 2 weeks, those first 2 weeks, he was really going after it and trying his best. But then after those 2 weeks, he kind of fell off. And I see that too with people around me. Like they'll get really excited and ready to
Yeah.
go, and then after a short amount of time, maybe like like the weight comes off pretty quick in the first few weeks, and
Yeah.
then the weight will go up on the scale. And this is something like you and I have talked about too. Like it's fluctuations. It's normal for weight to go up and down, and that's why tracking the weight too and keeping a weekly average is so important because you can see the weight come down, or it's not going to come down every week. It's going to stay the same every now and then. But that's why that's so important too. So you don't get discouraged, and you don't just quit right there and go fall back into old habits, because those old habits
Yeah.
are comfortable and easy, and that's your comfort zone. Those old habits,
Yeah.
and then the weight goes right back up to where you were those 2 weeks before, or even in most cases, I would say even above that, and then you feel guilty, and then you feel
Yeah.
worse about yourself, and you spiral down,
Yeah.
and it's a hard thing.
Yeah.
I understand it's a hard thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, and in many of those circumstances, it can be, to an extent, prevented by accountability and support, right? And that's why, like, I always tell people, like, listen, if you I know coaching isn't the cheapest thing. You don't need to have a one-on-one coach, but having some sort of accountability and support system of people that have been there and done that helps so much, right? That's why, like, I actually recorded a podcast yesterday. I was being interviewed on this other podcast, and they asked me, like, what are the three main things you would recommend somebody who's starting to improve their health and fitness? And the number one thing I said is find a supportive, fun environment. When it comes to fitness, like, maybe start with doing group classes where everybody there is like super happy and enthusiastic about it because it builds that rapport, it builds that enjoyment. And if you like fall off, somebody's going to call you, be like, hey, I haven't seen you. Like, where are you? Right. Or if you're having negative thoughts, you might have somebody give you some positive feedback that helps you feel better. I think this leads perfectly into my next question. I wanted to ask you, what role has accountability and support played in your overall success?
I did huge,
Yeah.
probably number one, like at the very top of the list for me, because I was one of those people that would kind of make rationalizations and justifications for things.
Mhm.
There's always going back to what we talked about before. There's always going to be some kind of special occasion going on.
Of
Uh,
course.
Birthday parties, traveling, weddings, all types of stuff. There's always going to be a special occasion, and so it was always easy for me to say, "All right, well, that's just here's this birthday coming up, or I'm gonna be drinking, so all right,
Mhm.
whatever." Have the extra piece of cake because I'm already drinking, I'm already having fun, I already ate this big dinner, so all right, just go ahead and have it.
Yeah.
But now, um, there was when we just started. I remember, I think it was in February, like about a month in. You had told me like I'd be going out a lot. Same thing, birthday parties, going out to the bars. And I remember you telling me, like, if you're really serious about this, if you really want to make these changes that you say you want to make, that these goals that you have, if you really want to hit them, you're going to have to make sacrifices.
Mhm.
Those sacrifices are like they're not going to be easy. You can't go out drinking 2, 3 times a week and see the results that you want. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. So having you there, having the accountability has been huge. It's been really really big for me for my mindset and for I'm very comfortable saying this for my life going forward. There are goals that I have short and long term, and I think I have the right mindset now, and I have you to thank for that because before that there was always, like I said, rationalizations,
Yeah.
justifications for everything that I was doing, and in my mind it was okay,
Yeah.
and that's not how it works.
Yeah. And it's not about it being like right or wrong. It's just like if you want to achieve this one thing, those things don't align with it, right? And the reason why I asked that question about the accountability and support is because oftentimes when people think about hiring a coach, they really think they're like, well, like, why would I do that when like I already know how to eat healthy and like I know how to exercise? Like, how much more knowledge can they give me? And it's like, and I used to think this when I first started too. I thought like coaching was just about like the recommendations that I gave people, right? And the truth is, like, most people may not know the intricacies of nutrition, but they know what a healthy meal looks like, right? Like most people can tell you that's probably not that healthy. That probably is pretty healthy. Like most people know how to make those choices. And I've realized that over time, more and more, the accountability and support is really where a lot of the value comes in, right? Sure, there obviously is some education because there's a lot of misinformation. There's many misconceptions that people have. And, I've shared information with other clients that for them has been, uh, like, what's the term? Like mind blowing almost, right? Like, oh, like, is that really it? Like, I don't have to this or that, like one of the individuals who was on the call today, um, Lauren, she and I were talking. She started with me fairly recently, and she's worked with bodybuilding coaches before where they would give her a very, very strict and specific meal plan. Like 6 meals a day. These are the exact meals that you're eating. These are the exact quantities, and these are the exact times that you're going to eat. And when
Wow.
she started, and she's done that before and had some success with it. But then when she stops doing it, she just goes back because she never developed the healthy behaviors that we've been talking about. And when we started working together, I was like, okay, we're going to have a habit focused approach. I'm going to give you some small habits to work on. Every check-in, we'll talk about how the habits are going and we'll build upon them. Like if I want you to get to 150 grams of protein, you're currently at 100. Let's start at 110. Then we bump up to 120. Let's start with a certain number of steps. We slowly build those up. Let's have a regular meal schedule. Let's set some limits around alcohol intake, like very simple things. And it's just the approach of like, focus on what you need to do. Don't focus on what you don't need to do. And anyways, she's had really good success over the past month. Her weight's dropped about 6 pounds, and it's not just about weight loss, but that's like, her main objective. And like 3 weeks in, keep in mind her weight was coming down steadily. She was making progress. She messages me and um, she's like, what's your next suggestion? Like, when does this get harder? What else am I supposed to do? Like, are you going to tell me when I should be eating and stuff? And so we had a talk, and I was like, why do you think you need to focus on those things? And she was like, because this just feels too easy. And I was like, would you say the fact that like it's been really hard before is one of the reasons why you haven't had success long term? And she's like, yeah, it's just really hard. And I was like, then wouldn't it make sense to try to make it easier? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, these little things that we're doing, aren't they moving the needle in the right direction? She's like, yeah. I'm like, are you happy with your progress? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, then why do you think it needs to be harder? And she's like, because it just feels too easy. I'm like, that is the point. Like, it shouldn't feel super hard because the harder you make it feel, the less likely you are to actually do it. And if you start slow, it actually becomes enjoyable, right? Like you mentioned, you enjoy the things you're doing now. And it's funny because before we started working together, when you would probably go out to drink 2 or 3 times per week and you were doing all of these other things, if somebody asked you, Pasquale, does this sort of lifestyle seem enjoyable? And it's the lifestyle that you have now, where you're drinking a lot less, you're a lot more strict, you're more rigid, you're more uh, uh, regimented, for lack of a better word, you probably would have said, like, no, that doesn't sound too enjoyable. And honestly, if somebody took you from that position to just doing this 100% of the time, it probably wouldn't be that enjoyable. But it's this transition period that makes it feel more enjoyable over time. And I really think that's where the accountability and support comes in because people understand I'm here, I need to get there, but they don't know how to make a smooth transition in a stepwise fashion to get there, right?
Right. At least with me, it's always been like an all or nothing. Like
Yeah,
there,
yeah, yeah. It's most people.
yeah. Instead of making those slow steps, I would always just immediately go to 10,000 steps,
Yes.
or cutting calories by like a crazy
Yeah.
amount and an unnecessary amount, or keto diet or carnivore diet, cutting something completely out where it doesn't need to be like this.
Yeah.
The balanced diet is, I tell people all the time, it's like the best thing. It really is, because I have my protein, which I enjoy eating anyway, so that's never been an issue for me. But then I'm also, there's no restrictions.
Yeah.
So if I want something, I can have it. I just have to make sure I plan for it,
Of
and
course.
and that's something that's been like probably the most enjoyable part
Yeah.
for me, because I love eating.
Are you tired of spending countless hours grocery shopping, cooking, and preparing your meals? I get it. Time is precious, and that's where Icon Meals comes into play. I've partnered with Icon Meals to bring you delicious, macro-friendly, and high-protein meals that will make it easier than ever for you to achieve your fitness goals. I understand that you may have hesitations over the cost of a meal prep service compared to cooking food at home. But let's face it, how often do you spend more money eating out because you didn't have time to prepare your food at home anyways? With Icon Meals, you not only save time, but you invest in your health. These meals are carefully crafted to be healthier and more in line with your fitness goals than most of the food that you eat out anyways. So why wait? Visit iconmeals.com and explore their wide array of mouth-watering meals. And as a special bonus for listening to this podcast, use code Joseph10 at checkout for a special discount off of your order. By the way, you can find all of the necessary links in the description of this podcast. Don't let time be a barrier to your success. Choose Icon Meals and fuel your journey towards a healthier, fitter you. Yeah. And I do too, man. It's like if somebody told me I couldn't eat certain things to achieve a certain body composition, I would never achieve that body composition because I love food. Most people love food, right? Would you say, and this is where it's like ironic almost, that having the mindset of that you do not need to intentionally restrict anything, that you are allowed to eat whatever you want. As long as you plan for it, as long as you meet your protein and fiber needs, as long as you create the caloric allotment for it, would you say that mentally that actually perhaps reduces cravings or even desire for some of those foods because you're not actively thinking that you have to restrict them?
No, yeah, absolutely. Because I know I can have it whenever I want.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like going back to like the special occasion, right? Where it's like if I want a serving of ice cream, I can have it if I want it, and I can make room for it. And when we I think it was April or something like that of last year, we hit our cutting goal, and then we increased the calories because we wanted to start putting on muscle. And I was eating like a half pint of like healthy ice
Okay.
cream every night because I needed the calories. And I said,
Yeah.
all right, I'm hitting my protein, I'm hitting my fiber. What can I do? All right,
Yeah.
cool. Let's have some ice cream tonight. It's
Ice
not.
cream, baby.
Oh yeah, it's great. I'm a big ice cream person.
Yeah.
Ice cream person.
Yeah.
So that was like, that kind of goes back to something a little bit different too. Like when you're done cutting, so you put in that. To me, cutting is the hard work.
Hmm.
Like and getting those extra calories in, that was the fun part.
Yeah.
Like that was the extra fun
Yeah.
part. What why cool I have like 200, 300, 400 extra calories now compared to a month ago.
Yeah.
What can I fill that in with? And that was something that was really enjoyable for me.
Yeah. That's great, man. I love to hear all that from you. I quickly also want to talk about the role of exercise, right? Because we haven't talked much about exercise. And I'd love to know um, what were some of the things that you were doing with exercise before, and what are some of the really the main things you've benefited from in terms of the resistance training component? Because some of the people listening may or may not know, like my whole philosophy is that resistance training in a fashion that optimizes muscle growth should probably be the main component of exercise for most people who are trying to loosen body fat and improve body composition, right? So, what were you doing before? Were you really focusing on lifting as much as we are now? I know you played a ton of basketball. I know you did some lifting before, but also, what are some of the things that you and I have really worked on with lifting that have benefited you most?
So before we started together, I was lifting. I was doing like these big compound movements like squats, deadlifts, bench press. Because I work out at home. I have all this stuff in my basement, so I have a squat rack down there. I have a bench, um, and that's kind of what I was doing. And if I remember correctly, I think I was doing like full body workouts like squats and deadlifts and bench presses like I think every day or like every other day or something
Mhm.
like that. I think I was focusing on like legs one day and then upper body the next day. And I was doing like 5 sets of 10 or like something like that. Like for everything, every muscle group, like every day. And I remember I wasn't taking any rest days. So I was doing something every single day, like 7 days a week. I was doing something. And when we started working together, I, the word that comes to mind is humbling, because I thought I knew what I was doing, but I really wasn't. I it was really uh, amazing. You think you know everything. You think you're doing stuff right. You're putting all the time and effort in, but and then someone comes along and says, "No, that's not what you should be doing. That's not optimal. That's not the best way to do things." I remember sending you my first video of it was squats, and I had like 200 pounds on the bar or something like that, and you saw it and you were like, "You're not even going like a quarter of the way down. Like that's not how you do it." So
Yeah.
so um like that, just the knowledge in itself, like humbling me and showing me that I was doing things wrong was really big for me, because the minute you think you know everything, and the minute you think that you know you're doing everything right, it's probably the minute that you someone needs to come along and tell you that there's something more here. There's something more that
Yeah.
you can learn. There's something that you can do a little bit better. But in terms of overall, since we started working, um, I've noticed things with my body composition that I've never had before.
All right, guys, we had some small
Right.
technical difficulties. My apologies, but we're back. Pasquale, you were talking about, a lot of the things that you learned when it comes to resistance training, improving range of motion, etc. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So once we, got technique down, and that's something we still work on every week,
Yeah.
is, sending those videos. That's something, it's actually something that I didn't, that was my least favorite part of it. I think that was because that was my ego getting in the way,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to hear, you're doing this wrong. Here's how you can do it better. Because I thought, I would watch a YouTube video or 2 or
Yeah.
3 and know how to do something.
Yeah.
Um, but now it's actually turned into one of my, if not my favorite part of our check-ins, is how can I improve? How can I do better? And since we started the resistance training, and since I started with you, I've noticed changes in my body composition, not just with losing fat, but with muscle definition.
Yeah.
I had some really nice progress. And we mentioned before, and like the abs, I never thought I'd have that before. My shoulders, I've noticed,
Yeah.
my biceps, my chest. I used to get make fun of all the time for my chest before, because it was
Yeah.
not in the best of shape. But now, well,
Yeah.
now I feel like super confident now, um, with where I am, and it's actually just making me more excited for when we finish cutting and we can start trying to put on muscle again. I'm really really looking forward to that phase of working
Yeah.
together again.
Dude, thank you for sharing all that, man. It's so funny. You're extremely coachable too, though. Like I remember when you were first sending me videos, I would give you feedback and you would implement it like right away. And there were still some things to work on, but you would implement it to the best of your ability. Um, I've worked with clients before who have a big ego and like have a really hard time implementing the things, right? It's like I tell them like a certain recommendation, whether it's slow down the eccentric or do this or do that. And it's going to require them to drop the weight substantially. And they just say, do not want to. And it often sometimes takes months to correct that little thing, which obviously slows down rate of progress, right? But it's so funny, man, because even just a personal story, I used to do the quarter squats back in the day when I first started lifting, and I was hitting like 5 or 6 reps with like 295. I was like, man, I'm so strong. I almost got 3 plates in the bar. I'm hitting it for reps. And then a lot of my early on education from lifting came from YouTube as well. And I started seeing these dudes just talking about like the importance of full range of motion squatting. And I was like, okay, like if I squat this deep with 295, maybe I'll like drop to like 250 and do a full range of motion squat. Dude, I dropped all the way down to 135. I could barely do it 3 or 4 times with a full range of motion. It's humbling, right? But like it's important to drop the ego and like prioritize these things, because then you actually stimulate muscle growth, right? You could probably go up to from like 200 to 400 pounds doing a quarter squat and your legs won't grow, because that stretch is incredibly important for stimulating muscle growth. So it's those little things that like, yeah, most people that I work with, they're already like, oh yeah, I know how to lift weights. It's like, yeah, you know how to lift weights. You know the basic mechanics of these things, But now it's really important to like nail down these little variables that give you exponentially better progress, right? Awesome, man. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Pascal. I appreciate you being here a ton, man. The last thing I'd love for you to share is, and just honest answer, what would you say to somebody who perhaps is listening and is considering working with a coach?
Do it. I think it's worth the money. It's probably the best money I've ever spent, really, because I'm like I said before, I'm not just set up for the short term now. Now I have long term in mind, and with the knowledge that I've gained, knowledge that you've given me, I feel really comfortable moving, um, being able to achieve my goals, and um, just take the leap. Just stop thinking about it and just do it.
Well, dude, thank you so much for the kind words, man. For people listening, Pascal, did I pay you to say that?
No, no, not at all. Like,
All jokes aside, no. But seriously, man, thank you so much for the kind words, Pascal. Thank you so much for taking time to be here today, dude. I know I always say this to you, but I feel super honored when I get the opportunity to work with people like you because you're coachable and you actually implement stuff, man. And you understand that it still requires work, right? For anybody listening here who's considering coaching, do not think that coaching is guaranteed results. Because I've worked with a ton of clients who do not get any results. Who are the clients that get no results? The ones that think that paying for coaching immediately guarantees results, right? Without having to put in a certain amount of work or dedicate time and effort towards these things. Because you still have to dedicate time and effort towards these things. You still have to put in the work yourself. What I usually like to say that coaching is my role is to guide you in the right direction, right? My goal is to make sure that you are moving the needle in the direction you actually want to go to because people do a million things and they move the needle in different directions. That's not the correct direction, but you're still going to have to spend time to learn about stuff. Obviously, I will recommend things that you should be learning about, things you should be reading about, things, essentially guiding you in that correct direction. I'll be giving you feedback that you should be implementing, but it's still your job to put in the work and implement those things. And the reason why I say I feel honored to work with somebody like you is because you've always done that, right? You've never really like given quote unquote excuses, right? You understand when perhaps you understand that you are accountable for a lot of this too, right? And when people have that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to hire a coach to guide me in the right direction and I'm going to put in the work, when you marry those two things, that's when you really see some really great progress. Anyways, brother, thank you so much for being here. We'll catch up soon. We'll catch up during this week's check-in.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me. I appreciate it.